Okay, I'll just open us up with karakia. Me karakia tātou, whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhunga, haumie, huie, tai kie. Tēnā koutou, kua hui mai nei, ngā mihi ki ngā mana whenua, I ngā manuhiri no mai haere mai. Ko waio, ko ingarangi, ko kotirana te whakapaparanga mai, engari ko Tāmaki Makaurau te whenua tupu, kei o tautahi ahau I noho ana, he pauhiwa ahau I PGF Services, ko Abby Popham tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. E hoi anō, kia ora koutou. Thank you all for being here today. We really, really appreciate it. The kaupapa for today is all about rangatahi and gambling, what we can do as a service, but also a sector to improve access and outcomes for rangatahi experiencing harm from gambling across Aotearoa. We really want to have meaningful conversations with you and hear your thoughts on reducing barriers to service access for rangatahi, what works, what doesn't, and we'll also be, all good, David, no worries. We'll also be having these conversations directly with young people at the same time as well. So please don't feel like this is our only kōrero in this space. We're trying to do broad research as much as we can. Now, before we get started, it'd be great to do a little bit of whakawhanaungatanga, get to know who is here, although, you know, we do know a few of you already, but it's a great chance for all of us here. So if we could go around and share our name, what region we're in, what service we work for, and, you know, how much we do with rangatahi or with youth, if you'd like to share that, go ahead. So kia ora, I'm Abby. I am based here in Ōtautahi, but used to live in Tāmaki Makaurau, was born and raised in Auckland. I work for PGF Services, obviously, Gambling Harm Service, and do a bit of work with rangatahi, but it's probably not the majority of my work. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you. And how about after each of us goes, we can nominate the next person to go, hey? So I nominate Piti.
Atamari kia tātou, nei rā tumihi atu kia koe, Epi I whakatau I a tātou, I rongi ngā whakaro nui o ngā mātua tupuna. Nā reira, ko Piti taku ingoa, he pauhiwa au ki PGF Services I Kirikiriroa I Waikato. So my name is Piti, I'm a health promoter for PGF Services based here in Hamilton and Waikato. Covering the Te Manawataki region under a generalist contract. But yeah, really excited to be a part of this forum to welcome and connect with our sector providers. So no mai haere mai kia tātou. I'll hand over to Nita.
Morena koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Nita ro Pakariki ahau, pauhiwa matua ki Tāmaki Makaurau. So I'm a health promoter for PGF Services in Tāmaki. I live in Otara and growing up in a community that was deemed a problem area. And I have a lot of connections with youth groups and youth workers in that particular area, and I also sit on the board that we've just recently been given a contract to service young people, and through Ministry of Health. So kia ora, Mel.
Kia ora, ko Mel tukuingoa, ko Ruahine te maunga ko Manawatu te awa North Switzerland o ko tūpuna e noho ana ahau ki whakaoriori. E mihi ana ki nau, Katie mahi ahau ki Katie Opi whakaora. So Mel, based in Masterton, or the Wairarapa, work for the Salvation Army Oasis, and working as a public health worker here. And in terms of youth, I do a few presentations in high schools, and so have had some kōrero with particularly teenage boys, but just an area I'm really keen to learn and understand more about. And part of that is because of having teenagers as well and understanding some of those, some of the conversations that they have with their friends. So yeah, excited to be here. David.
Hi, I'm Dave. I'm from the Parahika in the King Country and currently living in, well, pretty close to Waikeria Prison. Working in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, Tauranga and Rotorua. I'm currently in Tauranga. It's a beautiful day outside. I'm working as a counsellor for Gambling Harm for Problem Gambling Foundation. That's me. Have we got anyone else? Sorry, I can only see you fellas, the first 5.
Okay, how about I nominate Serene? Thanks, Dave.
Cheers.
Morena tātou, aroha mai for my office. I've just been at a whānau hui, so, but I didn't want to miss this one, so I'm in my car. Hoi anō, he ria hau no te taitokirau, me te kuki au nani hoki, ko Serene tōku ingoa, he kaimahi au no te kōhau health, mai i Kirikiriroa. Yeah, so I'm Serene. Live in Hamilton, from the far north and from the Cook Islands, working at Te Kōhau Health in the public health promotions role with our gambling support team. And we have just kind of re-established the team within our organisation. It's been a bit kind of empty for a while, so we're just rebuilding all our foundations, and our hope is that we've developed the Rangatahi program for delivery, and so we're just out scouring places to start that. So, kia ora.
Beautiful. Thank you, Serene.
Daniel.
We've seen you come off mute, Daniel, but I can't hear you if you are talking. We heard you earlier.
Maybe move to Chucky.
Okay.
Hello, Chucky. They're there, but not there.
Judy, we'd love to hear from you with, just your name, where you're from, and experience.
Oranga, Judy Smitheram, ko Keke Te Moka and ko Hakaturi Te Awa. I originally come from Hakaturi, Ashburton. I now live in Rangatahi. I have my passion is genealogy, so I could run through it. I come from Wiradjuri in Australia. Go to England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Switzerland, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Faroe Islands, and Iceland. So one of those colonial people that have a huge mixture of people. I work here at the Salvation Army at the Men's Hostel in Addington. We have tane from 18 through to 70 plus. So yes, I've got a couple of young people who are definitely struggling with gambling addictions at the moment.
Kia ora, Judy. Thank you.
Serene, do you want to introduce your team? Seeing we can't hear them.
Yeah, kia ora. So Daniel, Chucky and I work together at Te Kōhau Health. Daniel is our clinical counsellor, and so that's where his focus is. Background is in counselling services, previously with ACC, and now we're lucky enough to have him and his experience. And Chucky, he te maitia no te ao motu whānui o te iwi Māori. So Chucky is virtually from every iwi that you could possibly think of throughout Aotearoa. And Chucky is our cultural supervisor and support arm for our team at Te Kōhau, also with lived experience. So I'm very lucky to have his experience with us as well.
Thank
And
you.
I think that's it from us.
Thank you, Serene. Kia ora, Chucky. Great to see you. Hopefully things are working a little bit better now. We just asked Serene to introduce you since we had some tech difficulties. I think it seems to be going around at the moment, doesn't it?
Mhm.
So it's great to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. Like I say, this is really important mahi for us, and we really value everything that we can learn from one another in this space. As all of us are working very specifically with gambling harm, or like you, Judy, are working with people who we know are experiencing harm from gambling. I did have some slides around gambling harm and things like that, but I feel like I might be telling you how to suck eggs, so I won't waste our time with that. However, obviously we are focusing on rangatahi. So some of the data that I've had a look at is in 2020, just under 50% of people between 16 and 24 had gambled in the past year, but also those young people made up 14% of moderate and high risk gamblers. So quite high numbers. We're also seeing, and probably a lot of you are seeing as well, the increase in potential harm from gaming and the convergence between gaming and gambling with loot boxes. That is so huge. In fact, I was reading an article earlier today. In fact, I'll put it in the chat, out of Australia, about Australian children as young as 10 are hooked on gambling. There was a grandparent listed in that article whose grandkids had spent $12,000 on her card, and as much as she could be linked with gambling harm services, she owned that debt, which is really hard. So it is a huge issue, and obviously we know generally things that are happening in Australia are pretty similar as happening here. In terms of loot boxes, I'll put an article in that is specific to Aotearoa. And you guys have probably seen this before, but it's just quite interesting in terms of the scale of the harm that we're seeing, and there is so much that we still don't know about. And even data 1 or 2 years old is almost irrelevant in this space, right? Oh, the first stats, yes. So this is from Te Herenga Hauora's results from the Health and Lifestyle Survey 2020. Just under 50% of people between 16 and 24 had gambled in the past year, and young people make up about 14% of moderate and high risk gamblers. And that's their wording. So what we at PGF Services are wanting to do currently, why we are doing this, is because we're currently collecting information and data on what potential barriers there are to accessing services for rangatahi, particularly around gambling harm. We know that there is so much shame and stigma in general, and we can only imagine that the barriers are even higher for rangatahi. So we want to do as much as we can to make a tailored referral pathway for rangatahi coming through, and would love as much of your experience and knowledge as possible. Yeah, it's all about increasing access to service, what works with rangatahi, what doesn't, and how we can just do our best to serve that community that is currently, pretty isolated. And I don't know how many, rangatahi services are asking about gambling, how much it is known as an issue of harm. So yeah, the more that we can do to increase that. So what I've got some questions that I would love feedback on. I have got them in slides that I can have them up for us to see. However, I wonder, sometimes I personally, if there's a slide up, am less likely to talk. So I wonder if maybe I just pop them in the chat for us to all talk about so we can all still see each other, if that works.
Yep.
Cool, we can try that. So the first question is, how do you think gambling affects young people in your community? So obviously a lot of us are working in this space, so we've probably got a bit of a skewed view. But what are you seeing? How does gambling affect young people specifically in your community?
It's a way to fill their time, like those programs that look like games that get them, oh, if I put my card on here, I'm going to get this money. It fills their time where they don't necessarily have anything else that they can fill their time with. So that it becomes an addiction that way very quickly.
Oh, thank you, Judy. David.
See the lures being chucked out on like TikTok and Facebook and Snapchat, everything has ads for online gambling. Like it's everywhere, eh? And yeah, like you're talking about the loot boxes thing. My daughter just hit me up. She's 9. So yeah, she got the big no and the explanation why. I said, look, I don't mind buying you a car pack or a something like that you know what you're buying, but I'm not buying you something where you could be just getting bugger all for your money. Yeah, and then we talked about that Kaching documentary again, because she'd watched that with me. I said, that's all that this is. It's selling you a dream. And I think a lot of kids are, under the environment that we've got at the moment where there is a bit of a lack of hope. Yeah, they're drawn in by hope, and that's what it's being sold as. So
I believe that Facebook are trying to stop those ads because they don't want people to actually leave Facebook. So that not because of the problem with gambling, they just don't want people to exit their site. They want them to be trapped into Facebook, not going to off to other sites. So that's just something they're doing now.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, Dave. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that question?
For us at Te Koho Health, we're based, our whare, our Te Koho Health whare is based in quite close proximity to some of the more lower socioeconomic areas of Hamilton. So for example, Enderley, we're just down the road from Enderley, Fairfield, which are the lower socioeconomic areas. And for us, it just further contributes and compounds to those difficulties that those communities are already facing. And majority of the time, these rangatahi are unsupervised around the use or gaming, or the parents are active in the gambling arena, either at the casinos or on the pokies. And so it's almost a normalized behavior for a lot of the kids who are in the areas around where our whare sits. And so trying to have a conversation with them about it becomes quite difficult, if that makes sense. And also at times it's not the priority. We're often kind of caught up in trying to, I suppose, just manage crisis kind of levels before we can even get to a place where we can have these conversations. And this is just being able to provide the bare basic necessities, food, for example, those kind of things. So that's kind of what we see in the community that directly surrounds us where we're placed.
Thank you, Serene. That's really powerful. And I think something that is probably echoed across the motu.
I think my microphone might be working now. Yay! I was also reading a article about stimulants and gambling, and how stimulants access the risk-reward pathways in the brain, and the relationship between gambling and stimulants creates a sort of a spiral. And it's been noted that young people, it creates a sort of a catalyst for problem gambling. They noted that people sort of around the late adolescent years were more likely to engage in problem gambling if they were combining stimulant use with gambling than those who weren't engaging in stimulants. And given our issues with methamphetamine use in low socioeconomic areas, then, you know, that's just a you know, it's just only going to get worse, really.
Sorry, someone's just blending in the kitchen next door to me. I hope you can't hear that. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that one before we move on to the next question?
Just to contribute that, you know, with some of the rangahau that I've done around gambling and Māori, it is intergenerational. And so, you know, our rangatahi are being born into these environments where they're exposed to addictions, food, gambling, whether it's gambling just for fun, like just as pure entertainment, family card games, which can be quite, you know, a social activity, can be quite like a nice thing, to more harmful forms of gambling. And in having conversations with rangatahi at Careers Expos, or even in different programs, you know, they know what's going on in their homes. And so, you know, even comments like, oh yeah, because we had to have bread again for dinner, or, you know, they had to take their sibling across the road to the park because their parents were arguing. So our kids are actually, our tamariki and mokopuna actually being exposed to gambling in the home. And it's really concerning that it's become so normalized. So really looking, so the challenge is, how do we support rangatahi in those reach areas to process what's going on for them in the home, so that they can be more resilient and choose different pathways for themselves. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Pete. Thank you. A huge breadth of information there. I really appreciate that.
I was just going to say, I guess adding to that, is like some of the conversations that I've had with youth. Sometimes I've been in a group discussion. So, you know, sometimes kids are like wanting to sound, I don't know, they might be wanting to try and be cool in front of their mates, but some of them have said to me, oh, like, I see that as my way of getting, I'm planning on doing that when I leave school. I'm planning on doing it and see it as a, I was going to say a career pathway, but not that, but that is a way of getting money. And so, and I guess when they've had that exposure, that when they've been with, I've had kids talk about their uncles, like they see the wins, so they might, that perception of like, this is a way that I can generate money as well. So, yeah, I think that's also an area, and I guess that is where like the education element about what are the odds really like, can be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's so key, Mel. And, it's not just family anymore that are sharing those messages of it's a good way to earn money. Social media is doing that as well. Yeah, it's just all around. Hey, thank you. Chucky.
Yeah, Rana, can you hear me? Cool. Hey, look, I'm standing with Mel at the moment around education. It's primary. That's where we need to be in our kura, in our communities out there, and being in amongst it all, actually teaching our tamariki the actual harmful side of things. I'm going to go from my experience. There's nothing wrong with gambling. Gambling is not the problem. It's the harmful side of things. That's when it becomes harmful, the problem. So what do we do? I've been teaching my children and myself. I have been brought up in that genre, or that era of a family full of gamblers. Hence the reason why I ended up being the person that I was. I went through all that sort of stuff. But from my learnings, it's knowing the education to look for those signs for what is the harmful side of things. I mean, my family look at me, they laugh at me because I'm a gambler still myself, but I'm working in this space. I says, that's not a problem. I says, I come to the table with experience. I come to the table with a testimony, and my testimony alone is enough to scare a lot of people out of that harmful space. And it's just educating them. My two children, my oldest son, he gambles, especially with that online micro purchasing and stuff like that, looting and all of that. And I've told him, what is it about? And I've asked him, what is it about that looting that you find quite interesting? And he has shared it with me. It's just the thrill being able to have something in return, Dad. It's able to give me power in the World Wide Web industry and all that sort of stuff. Looting, power, money, that's what it's all about. And I said, okay, then cool. Have you seen the harmful side of things to that? And he was like, well, no, I haven't. So I educated him a little bit on the harmful side of things about it. Cyberbullying, all that sort of stuff, our rangatahi out there that actually get to that point in their lives that they look at suicide. I've educated him about it. And he's like, so you're telling me that my habit, Dad, could lead me to suicide? I was like, yes, it could. It could also lead you to bullying. I said, the amount of times Dad's sitting away and I actually hear you guys talking online, I was like, it's actually quite foul listening to your guys' language. I said, let me be of encouragement to you, son. Using that sort of language to some people online, especially if there's a young child out there of the age of 9, he might not like that sort of stuff. But if he's going to continuously hear stuff like that from, let's say, my son, it's going to draw him towards wanting to say those sort of things all the time. Okay, well, if it's all right for my mate online to say that, well, I'm going to find it for myself. So where am I sitting with this? Education is key. I've been trying to get into a kura here that is close within my vicinity here, and a lot of this stuff is all a bunch of like that knit stuff, vaping, micro purchasing, drugs, stories, the lifestyle that a lot of our whānaus have, it all makes like one whole big picture, you know? So I'm trying to get into a school where I can actually teach. I've got a couple of other colleagues here that are willing to share their part of the services in regards to bringing them off that sort of stuff, vaping, being able to open up to their student council or all those sort of things, you know. So I'm standing with Mel at the moment with around education. Education is key. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Chucky. Thank you for that. And I think it leads us really nicely into our next question. So the next question is around, if young people are seeking help, where do you think they'd go for information or support? And I think that links into, well, what do they know? You know, all of us can recognize that it can be really challenging to have this conversation around gambling with rangatahi. And, you know, if we're not doing it, who is? And it's kind of a whānau by whānau approach as opposed to even a school by school approach. So, you know, I was recently at an event at a university down here in Ōtautahi where I asked, if there was an issue around gambling, where would you go? Nobody could name a gambling harm service, even though they were talking to us. And so that was really, really interesting. So I'm interested in your thoughts around, you know, gambling or not gambling. When rangatahi need help, where do they go? What do they look for? Is it just to Google? Is it to someone they trust, someone in their family, someone at school? Would love your feedback on that.
So sorry, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Sorry, I keep cutting in and out, but I think it's like, where do they go? This isn't particularly about gambling, but I was speaking with a young person's mum the other day, and they shared with me how their son had been feeling really, I guess, unmotivated and down. And he ended up saying to his mum, I think you need to, I'm going to hand in my gaming PC for a while. And he had gone online and done some research, and he said to her, it was something quite articulate, like, I realize I've had the surge of dopamine. It's like a 14-year-old boy. And like, I know I've got to give it back to, I've got to give it up for a while to start enjoying life again. And I said to his mum, I was like, that's quite phenomenal to me. And he hadn't talked to anybody, but he'd been online. And so it made me wonder about how much of our rangatahi, like if that's the source that they will go to. So I guess with the other young people I've spoken with, that probably, I guess, there is so much information on the internet that I feel like that my experience has been that that's the go-to, but I don't know what. Yeah.
Thanks, Mel. That's really helpful. Does anyone have any other thoughts on that? Dave?
Yeah, I've got a few friends with sort of like teenage kids, and they're really struggling to get any help at all for their kids. Any kind of mental health assistance, they've got to go to the GP. They can go to their local, you know, school guidance counselor sort of thing. And a lot of the time they don't want to do that, or they don't get on with that person. And wait times for GP-based counselling are huge. And yeah, just floundering. And when it comes to gaming addiction and that kind of thing, and the loot boxes and stuff that are in there, I'm not sure if we're capturing that, to be honest, through our business. I know that I'm not seeing anyone in that age group. That doesn't mean that they're not out there. But I'm not seeing them personally. I know that there are people out there suffering, but they're not coming to me. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate that, and very relevant. Yeah. Chucky?
Just to touch on a bit of stuff what David was talking about. I actually had this is beside the point. I had a whānau come in this morning and ask about a services that could help her daughter. Now, I was actually stuck on the spot. Now, I should have actually thought about this before. Knowing that what I know now is that I'm able to share with our whānau that it is best practice that we send them to a GP, get it rolling, get it started, get something going. Even for yourself, let's say, for example, I came to you for help for somebody else. You would refer me to a GP that would be helpful for me to give me tools to help that person. So these are the sort of things that we need to be educated. And I'm grateful for a colleague because she actually shared that with me this morning. I was actually really, really stuck. I was like, oh, I haven't actually had this question before. So I tried my best to help her. I did manage to pass her on to somebody else. But what I should have had said is refer back to your GP for yourself or even for your kōrero and get the ball rolling. Because these sort of things help. And then from the GP to the specialist or to the primary health care, if it's mental health and everything, what they will do is they will take them on services and then they will elevate it from there. There are ways around it. So for yourself there, David, perhaps, bro, just encourage them to keep going back to their GP, get tools for them to help our rangatahi. I know you're saying that all they're having to do is wait for those GP appointments and stuff like that. Perhaps, maybe, I'm just saying off the cuff here, they're probably with the wrong GP.
Yeah, because and I'd agree with you because it's not just a matter of waiting; they're being denied by the what's the children's team?
Crisis? No.
Yeah, no, it's not crisis team, or maybe it is kids team. No, ICAMS. Yeah. Just being saying, nah, you don't fit the
criteria.
You don't fit the criteria.
Perhaps,
basically until they have an attempt, they're being told no at the moment. So it's
perhaps maybe the GP needs to further it into other services like counselling and stuff like that, apart from kids and all that sort of stuff. And like I was saying this morning, I'm actually quite grateful for my colleague because she works primary mental health for the PHO, and she's the one that actually said it to me. You could have referred her to my services. And I was like, well, I didn't think of that. And I didn't know that. But now that I do know, I'm able to use that as a tool now, so just those sort of things that we can think of.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Dave. I think that speaks to how complex our environment is for us as people working in the sector, let alone for rangatahi trying to navigate while in crisis and while struggling. So thank you. Appreciate that. Piti.
Yeah, so my nieces and nephews of all ages are into the internet. They're pretty savvy around their devices. So I would be wanting some type of website, general sort of youth inclusive website where they can go to specifically by typing in gambling for youth services. That was, that had information that they could, even for a project, a school assignment, that, is in language that is easy to follow. I think that would be beneficial. And just thinking about, I met this, I think he was about 24, and he told me that he started gambling professionally. So when he turned 18, when it was legal for him, so he'd sort of gotten curious, through, what's that gambling site? It's like this big, huge that people can go on, and anyway, it's hooking them in. So he just really shared what it was like for him. And then his gambling got to a point. So this is all in discussion with his father, who was like, what are you doing? And he was like, oh no, it's really good. And then he turned 18 and he went pro. But you know, he got caught up in chasing his losses, where he had to do his own research in order to make that final decision to stop gambling altogether. He was a pretty bright boy, you know, so not from a socially deprived area, you know, had some, you know, sense about him. But yeah, so that was just a little snapshot of his story. And I think there's more rangatahi like that out there, like him, who are curious about gambling and making, you know, money of it. But, you know, gambling is actually an unsustainable value system. And that is a problem because it's promoting a society, it's promoting, you know, winning and losing as a way to, you know, live your life, which is completely unsustainable when the odds reset themselves every time you take that spin. So something that's dedicated for youth that they can access online as a minimum, that links to other services and, you know, is educative, I think would be really beneficial for rangatahi. Kia ora.
Cool, thank you. Mel, quickly, sorry, I'm conscious of time and I've got 2 more questions I want to ask, but I'd love to hear from you, Mel.
Yeah, I was just going to jump on what Petty said and wondered if people had looked at the Mana Restore, I think it's called. It's like a gaming, yeah. So, you know, aimed at rangatahi, but I think to have something that was aimed at gambling would be awesome if we could do something online.
Mel, you're setting me up beautifully. My next question, name something you'd like to see on a youth-specific website for gambling harm. Could we quick fire, go around everyone, one thing that you'd like to see on a youth-specific website for gambling harm? Starting with Mel.
Okay, quick thinking. Oh, look, I just think where they could do a self-assessment tool where they feel safe in that, and then like where can I reach out to from there would be.
Yeah, beautiful. But also, like you were saying about that plain language as well, like self-assessment that they can actually answer the questions. Yeah, no, awesome, Mel. Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
Yeah, I think something that explains how gambling works, like either something that shows the sort of biochemical side of like how gambling affects the brain. You know, the sounds, the lights, the smells, etc., or something that explains the odds, how it's like, I think it's like 85 to 15 to the house in a casino. Something like that to make it a bit more clear to people about how rigged it is, basically. Because they go in with this illusion that, you know, they're gonna win, but really it's so heavily rigged. So if people actually know how stacked it is, maybe they'll be like, I don't know. You know, shattering the illusion is a big step in the right direction.
Awesome, Daniel. Thank you.
Totally, couldn't agree more. Something that links to social media platforms, something that is like creative and innovative, and you know, uses like cartoons to get the message across, like something like Official Jammy Lemmy, or like, you know, somebody that, you know, that sort of caters to the diversity of youth groups, rainbow, rangatahi, like male rangatahi, like, yeah. It's just got to be really such a cool space that rangatahi want to engage with. It can't be boring and plain. It's got to be dynamic and engaging and interactive. Like going to Te Papa.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you, Petty, is that it needs to be designed with youth, not for them. Yeah. Cool. Nita, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I just think that young people are into blowing up society, so we really need to get them on board to be activists around the way that the decisions are being made as to where pokie machines are going. So if there's something that can be creative in that form, it will empower them to be part of a process of decision making. Adults have to take them seriously too when it comes to that process. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Nita.
I was
Yeah.
going to say the same thing around what Nita was saying, that we not only need to educate our young ones, but all of our elders need to be educated too in that space. So making up stuff, these sort of things in those platforms, the social media, whether it be like Te Karere or something like that, everything needs to be wrapped around that whole space of not only just for our rangatahi, but also starting at home with our elders as well, and just sharing that whole education. Because honestly, you teach an adult how to do something, I'm pretty sure they share it with their rangatahi. And like, I'm only speaking from experience. I lived it every day. Gambling was the norm in my family. So I thought it was normal. Let's try and trend a new normal by showing our older people and our rangatahi in mind about these sort of things. Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you. And I think it's all about what is talked about, but also what is just happening and is absorbed. The unsaid says a lot too. Thank you. Serene.
I'd like just something that just says something like a quick tips kind of thing that you can, if you're worried or something, you can try this. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah, because not everybody's ready to. We know this, that not everybody is ready to engage with us to seek help, but people are curious.
Yeah, and not everyone might need to engage with us.
Yeah, exactly. And so just something that kind of like, and it could go alongside the self-assessment tool. Maybe to, I don't know, do the self-assessment tool and then, I don't know, pops up with something.
Yeah.
Here's some things you could try or something.
Yeah.
And then like
that.
Pete was saying, a direct dial contacts this, which is one that's up to date, one that's current.
Yeah.
Because people, they may not have come to our services for gambling, but they may have accessed our service for something else. And the likelihood is, if they've had good experiences with our organisations in the past, they're more likely to come back. So those would be the two things that I'd look for on a site.
Awesome. Thank you. Judy, thank you for your message. I appreciate that. Now, conscious of time, I will just pop through our last question, which is, yes, Judy. Yes, of course you can.
Something to not to remove, but to acknowledge that whakama, that shame that people feel about being in that space of being addicted, because as we all know, they're very powerful. They've got people researching how to capture people into that system. And I know that my two men just feel absolutely ashamed about that they are caught.
Yeah, thank you. That's totally powerful. Yeah, and I think that links in with what people were saying earlier about let's show how they work, how these tools work to get us hooked, and that it's not, someone isn't wrong or shouldn't be ashamed if that has happened. Yeah, thank you. Cool. Petty.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just add quickly also just information like if their parents are gamblers. So not, they're being impacted by the gambling of a parent.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Now, final question, and I will send out an online form as well, because I know that we're going to run out of time here today because this is a big question, this next one. So you're welcome to fill it in later anonymously, or you can put your name if you like. But so this next question is, what changes or adaptations do you think gambling harm support services require to meet the needs of young people?
I've noticed that there's a real lack of understanding about the harms of gambling with youth workers. So I think that there needs to be, like, I'm a health promoter and I've been promoting that they invite me to come and do training programs with their youth workers. And this is really about bringing knowledge to them so that they can identify, firstly, that there is gambling happening in the family and then what to do from there on. A lot of young people are in environments where, you know, they attend things like church groups and activities and sports teams and stuff like that. So it's not just youth workers, there are adults that are don't cope or are incapable of identifying that someone is in a household, if not in some sort of addiction. And it's about asking the right question and where to go from there. So for to answer that question, I'm just thinking that some of the ones who are faced with working with young people need to have the information and be aware of the harms of gambling.
Yeah. So I suppose the gambling harm support services would need to be better connected with those working face to face with Rangatahi. Yeah. Cool. What other thoughts do people have? Yes, Dan.
Sorry. I was thinking a change of language, because we're a little bit older than the Rangatahi, and we think in different terms. We're educated, so we speak in different terms. And social media has created a cultural shift, and it has definitely changed the way that they think and process the world. And so I think we have to account for that as well. My partner is a content creator for YouTube, and I've noticed how that has changed her perception of the world and the content creators that she works with. It just changes the way that you view the world. Like, for instance, there were some content creators that were paid by online gambling companies. They were gaming creators to play their gambling content for a month, and they were paid stacks of money to do it. And one of them got hooked on the gaming program, and ended up losing all of his money. Ended up poor and having to start from scratch. But yeah, anyway, the point is we have to make a cultural adaptation to work with these rangatahi, because at the moment we're running from behind.
Yeah, very relevant point. Thank you, Daniel. Petty for our last statement.
Rangatahi have quite a short attention span, so their ability to sort of move through things very, very quickly. So you do need a skilled workforce. Recruiting into that it's quite a specialist area, working with rangatahi. I think having opportunities for group sessions with rangatahi where they can be amongst each other and bounce off each other and sort of create, and then having the workforce that is skilled in being able to facilitate groups with rangatahi, I think would be of benefit as a service. Because I think rangatahi are better together, but also having, one-on-one if that's what they want.
Love that. Thank you, Petty. Sorry that we have run out of time for more feedback, but I want to genuinely thank you all so much for everything you've contributed. It has been incredibly valuable. Thank you for allowing us to record. We look forward to taking on all of your feedback. and yeah, seeing what we can do and learning from one another in this space. So much appreciated. I know that I have learned a lot and really valued hearing from all of your experience. I hope you feel the same way. Thank you also to everything that has been contributed to the chat. That was really cool. I will follow up this kōrero with an email with the links to the articles that I shared earlier, as well as these questions, but in an online form. So if there's anything you'd like to add, or if you'd like to share it with any of your team who weren't able to be here today, or any other services, feel free to do that. I've also got an online survey for tangata whaiora. So Judy, if the young men that you're working with would like to give us any feedback, there is a way for them to do that too. No pressure, just if they're interested. We know that, since we've started talking about lived experience within our service, we have got so many people who want to share their stories and want to be involved and want to contribute. So anything we can do to offer that opportunity is something that we're really keen to do. So yes, thanks again. I'll stop talking, close us with karakia, and we can all move on with what is hopefully a beautiful day across the motu. Me noi tātou. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te aka whai o tō tātou ariki a Ukraiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake, amine.
Amene.
Ngā mihi, everyone.
Ngā mihi, kai te
Shaka,
koutou.
o mama waina, nā see you soon.